Welcome to Unraveling Education, the podcast that's part storytelling, part information, and part whodunit. We'll be investigating the underlying issues harming the public education system and identifying the key players involved. Welcome back to Unraveling Education. I'm Danielle Ford, former trustee of CCSD, which includes Las Vegas, Nevada. In today's episode, we're going to begin with an update on the happenings in CCSD. We could call this part the Jara saga. How many times would Jara actually have to be fired or resign for it to constitute as a saga? It's 4, right? Then I think we're there. Then we will jump back to where we left off with the story time. I'll explain the snazzy conference the board, Jara, and CCSD staff attended with other school boards across the country and some of the national vendors we were introduced to. That will also include the incredibly traumatic experience I had with some of the other board members, which I may still have some PTSD from. And then the really scary epiphany that was had at yet another conference that the board and Jara went to. You'll learn the complete background of the mysterious stranger who was introduced in the brainwashing at Harvard episode and whose name was revealed in the bot board member billionaire episode to be AJ Crabill. Throughout this episode, as each thread gets pulled, many more names will be revealed, and I bet a few of them will ring a bell. Finally, we will recap all of the names and information that we've gathered so far to prepare for the launch of an upcoming investigation. These episodes are made possible by the support of viewers and listeners. If you would like to help further the production of the show, please head over to unravelingeducation.com/sponsor to make a donation. Everything helps and is greatly appreciated. So the Jara saga. As I explained at the end of the bot board episode, Jara sent in a resignation letter contingent on him getting a $500,000 payout. A board meeting was coming up where the trustees were going to consider accepting that and hiring a permanent superintendent, Jara's deputy, Brenda Larson Mitchell, who is currently being trained by the same people that trained Jara. Well, the community showed up, they packed the room. Every speaker and every single written comment said, do not give that guy a cent and do not hire a superintendent without a hiring process. Board discussion happened and we learned that the board president, Evelyn Garcia Morales, took it upon herself, without asking the board or the board's attorney, to go talk to Jara, suggest maybe he resign, and to let her know what would make him comfortable, what kind of payout would make him comfortable to do so. I personally don't believe that happened. I think that Jara wanted to hit 5 years here to cash in on Nevada's retirement package, which he did, and then to leave the district to get another superintendent job in probably a small Florida school district. And he wants to be able to say he resigned because he knows that he's going to get fired before his contract ends. So he probably went to Evelyn with this plan and she was on board, but that's just my opinion. If Evelyn's story is true though, then discussing his employment and the possible changing of his contract with him on her own crosses so many lines, and she should be held accountable for that. So back to the meeting, a motion was made to accept his terms and give him $500,000, and in a miracle vote, it was not approved. Now, Evelyn and Lola have never once had their motions voted down. They've always had a plan. They always know what's coming next, and they always have the majority vote. So they absolutely did not know what to do once their plan was foiled. So instead of just going, okay, well, on to the next item, or, oh, well, Jara, you will have to just accept no. Instead, they called an emergency closed session and they went to the back, leaving several hundred people to wait an hour for them to come back. They came back out and a motion to negotiate his termination for convenience was approved. So here's an actual reporter explaining it, not me there in the front, both starting and trying to stop fights.
It was very heated and so many people sharing their opinions because it is so important to our community. Now, a future vote is contingent on board council's negotiations regarding how much Jara would get paid. So the superintendent remains in his current role until the matter is resolved. Many people at the meeting feeling like they're not being heard by the trustees in their final vote. Pretty much the entire room, minus 1 or 2 people here and there, said Fire the superintendent. Do not give him a penny as he exits his role. He's been in that role for the past 5 years or so.
Now, Jara has again requested to resign, but with a payout of only $250,000 instead of $500,000. And there's an item to choose an interim superintendent, so at least that's a little better than the permanent superintendent that the board wanted to hire, except there are 2 options for interim superintendent. Brenda Larson Mitchell, same as before, Jara's deputy, and also Jason Gowdy, Jara's chief financial officer, who is not an educator and has 0 education experience. His background is in finance. Before CCSD, he worked with Vegas hotels. I mentioned him in the Diary of a New Trustee episode. During my onboarding, he kept telling me that trustees approve the budget. Instead of they create, they direct, or they oversee the budget. Anyway, so they either think that Jason Gowdy could actually be a good choice and actually run a school district, or he's the red herring, the joke option, the illusion of choice, which is sounding a lot like that superintendent selection training from Harvard. And I'm doing these episodes on my own timeline, but has anybody else noticed how they're lining up like exactly to current events? So that's where we are with that. Now let's do a quick recap. Or you know what? I might start calling these previously ons. Oh my God, you know how in shows there's always like a different voice at the beginning of the episode, and it's like previously on. Oh my God, I have so many ideas right now. Okay. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay. For now, I'll just do the previously on. Previously on Unraveling Education. We went to Harvard for an executive education training in which many of the sessions should have been named School Board Brainwashing 101. If you're not caught up on that episode yet, I suggest going back to it and the next episode, Storytime, the Bot Board Member. After Harvard, I felt more informed by some of the training and also some information that I got from trustees in other school districts. But I knew something was off, and that was confirmed when Lola Brooks impulsively tried to change the school board's entire governance model to the model used in Texas, in which Jara's buddy, the mysterious stranger, was the creator and the trainer. That led me to researching Lola Brooks. In the Bot Board Member episode, we covered that after Lola won her primary election in 2016, she scored herself a cushy job at a charter school, which is in direct competition with the district and only succeeds when CCSD students fail. And she received numerous large campaign donations from CEOs and tech billionaires far away from Clark County, Nevada. Now, before we move forward, I want to make a quick retraction, more of an edit to something that I said in that episode. When I was naming the donors in Lola Brooks' campaign reports, I made one mistake. I'm going to replay that clip really quick. So next, Lola Brooks receives large campaign donations from billionaires for the general election. Thousands of dollars from Reed Hastings, the billionaire tech investor and founder of LinkedIn, as well as thousands from his wife, Michelle Yee, and thousands from Sheryl Sandberg, former COO of Facebook. All 3 of these donors are investors in Rocket Ship Education, a national network of virtual charter schools. So I said Reed Hastings, but you can see in the video and the pic on the episode page that it's actually Reed Hoffman. Reed Hoffman is the one who's married to Michelle Yee, the LinkedIn founder, partner in Rocket Ship Education, yada, yada. But don't forget the other Reed just yet. Reed Hastings is a different billionaire who also buys school board candidates, so you can probably understand the mix-up. And now I would say, what are the odds that there would be 2 Reed H's buying out school board elections? But now knowing how many rich assholes are using their money to influence policy and contracts that determine the quality of public education for all of our children, the answer is pretty decent odds, actually. Now let's take it back to when this story time takes place, late 2019. The Clark County School District is in absolute chaos. That's been CCSD's baseline for as long as Superintendent Jara has been in the district. It was just always a new form of chaos. The major event at this point was about CCSD refusing to pay teachers raises that they had earned. And now CCEA, the main teachers union, was threatening to strike. This resulted in hundreds, if not thousands, of teachers showing up to a meeting where Lola Brooks was so rude to them. Then things escalated and CCSD police made us recess, at which time Lola ended up adjourning the meeting on her own. myself and some other trustees didn't even know that that had happened until the cops started like escorting us out. People were so mad, and rightfully so. Some trustees were followed home. It was a whole thing, but this became the norm with Jara in charge. Here's a clip because just explaining that meeting does not do it justice.
Your anger is displaced, but it is our job to absorb it. So we are here. So please be respectful to each other. And be...
Behind the scenes at this time, I was trying to find out why Jara hadn't had his mid-year superintendent evaluation. It's the president's job to schedule it. It's the board attorney's job to make sure that the president does their job, especially if it's something that is laid out in the superintendent's contract, because at any point, if the board doesn't abide by his contract, he could use it against us. So I wanted to follow his contract perfectly so that there were no issues when his contract was set to expire 2 years later in June of 2021. I felt like it was purposely being ignored so that in the future, Jara would be able to say that the board didn't evaluate him per the terms in his contract, and therefore he didn't have an opportunity to redirect or correct anything. I was paranoid about there being some sort of hidden trick to get him to remain superintendent, and I was right to be. In October 2019, we went to a Council of Great City Schools conference in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was snazzy. Now, keep in mind, I am from Vegas. My family members manage casinos. I've worked Vegas nightlife. Not much phases me, but there were board members from lots of different states, so I can imagine they would be very impressed with this kind of VIP treatment. It was most of the school board, Jara, and some of Jara's staff. They came on the trip to give presentations to other districts about things like setting and hitting goals and communicating with the public. I was thinking, like, no offense to our staff, but why would CCSD be presenting any of these things? We need to improve big time on these areas. Like, literally nobody should be taking advice from us. So each evening consisted of something fancy, which a chartered bus would take everybody to. All of the school board members, the superintendents, the district staff, and the reps from all the vendors that were there. The main vendor was NWEA, the Northwest Evaluation Association. Their assessments are called Measures of Academic Progress, otherwise known as MAP. You might be familiar. The first night was a private cocktail event at the Muhammad Ali Museum. I really enjoyed being able to tour it all by myself. That was actually awesome, but everybody was drinking besides me, and I was pretty bored after a while. Another night was a private bourbon distillery tour and then dinner on the roof. I went to bartending school. I'm a certified mixologist. I bartended at a piano bar, and honestly, I would be just fine if I never had to smell bourbon again. Another night was a private reception at the Kentucky Derby. Again, it was really cool to be there. Take the tour while the place was empty, but I find small talk exhausting, and having to wait for the bus to pick up everyone and not being able to leave quickly and without explanation or giving any goodbyes like I usually do at events was very stressful. One of the evenings, there was a formal banquet for the council's annual Green Gardener Award, which I learned was very prestigious. To even be nominated for it is an honor. I recognized one of the nominees' names, Ashley Paz, from the Harvard training that we attended. Her name popped to me because I remembered that she is good friends with Lola. You will hear her name again later in the episode. During the day, we would go to the breakfast hall with the same people, then sessions hosted by staff of the Council of Great City Schools, or some presentations from different districts, some presentations from the vendors that were there. There were vendor booths set up in the halls between all these things with reps passing out information and chatting up all the school board members. John Kim, the governance trainer from Harvard, was there with the same governance lessons that we received at Harvard. There was even a session called the Harvard Experience in which they just pitched the training at Harvard to a new group of school boards. I went to all the sessions, I took all the notes, I was trying to find ways to entertain myself, but it just was not enough. It felt like this endless abyss of the same people and the same training and the same vendors and the same chartered bus and the same small talk repeating over and over. Nothing was enlightening. There was nothing novel. It was an echo chamber. By the third day, I was kind of losing my mind. I skipped lunch to go introvert in my room and gain energy to make it through the second half of the day. I made it back down the escalator, and then to the right was the hallway to the ballrooms, and then to the left was the lobby and the exit. Next thing I know, I'm in a taxi being asked, "Where to, miss?" I say, "I don't know, it's around here." Well, that way is downtown Louisville, and over that bridge is Indiana. And that is why I have been to Indiana. More specifically, the Barnes & Noble and the Spencer's Gift Shop at the mall in Indiana. A few of us have been talking about doing something the final day because the conference ended in the morning and our flights didn't leave until later. I bring up that we should do an escape room, and I make the argument that it'll be a good team building exercise, which, I just wanted to do an escape room. I take escape rooms very seriously. Some of my friendships have ended in escape rooms. It's rare that I do not make it out of an escape room in time, and if that happens, I usually am like, reload it, let's go back. So this whole thing was my fault, okay? I'll take responsibility for what happened next. It was me, Lola Brooks, Irene Cepeda, Deanna Wright, Joe Caruso, who I still have to tell you about, and Linda Cavazos' husband, Bob, who was the only one of this entire group that I would ever enter an escape room with again. So I took the lead and explained that everyone needs to have a clearly defined role, and then I described the roles and everybody chose one. There was Joe and Irene as the clue seekers. They were to scan the room, find all the things that were part of the puzzle, bring all the information back to the central hub so that it's all in one place. Then Deanna Wright as the clue organizer, the guardian of the clue hub, keep the clues accessible, separate the items that have already been solved. There should be 2 piles, and that's it. Then there's the clue processors, me and Bob. We look at the pile of unused clues, we match things together, we communicate with the clue seekers, okay, we're looking for something that would fit these 3 blocks. We're looking for a lock for a small key. We have 5 out of 6 numbers. Look for one more number. Then we get the clues to the clue solver, who puts the blocks in or unlocks the lock or enters the numbers or whatever. And then that person, after they solve the clue, takes the used clues to the clue organizer, who puts the clue in the discarded pile. Simple. And this is where Einstein's law of relativity really hits. It's logically I know that it was only an hour, but just picture yourself being locked in a room that is an Area 51 theme with this group for an hour, with Irene Cepeda as the clue seeker basically just walking in circles, confused. Joe Caruso, trying to read every single thing on the walls and focusing on random things that do not matter at all to solving the puzzle. Lola Brooks as the solver, with a series of numbers that have to be typed into a 1980s computer correctly to get the next clue. And if they are typed wrong, it will freeze you out for 3 minutes. Here's the numbers, Lola. Just type in the numbers, Lola. Oh my God, Lola, you do data entry for a living. It's only 6 numbers, Lola. Oh my God, we're frozen out again. Okay, I'm going to read the numbers to you. I'm going to read them slowly. No, don't push enter yet. Oh my God. Okay, we're frozen out again for 3 minutes. Deep breathing exercises. Okay. And then on the floor in the center of the room is Deanna Wright, who was tasked with being the clue organizer and putting the clues into 2 piles, used and unused. Now I'm trying to make sense of all the clues in the unused pile while suggesting that Joe stop reading the fine print on everything on the walls and instead look for clues. And I'm pointing out things like that Irene's missing as she's walking past it. And I'm passing out locks and blocks as clues that are ready to be solved. Then I'm going back to the unused pile. And why are there now 5 piles? And why is Deanna just moving clues around for no reason? And you know what? I'm just going to skip this part. I'm just going to skip past this hour of my life. I can't go back there again. It's just too dark. In November, the board goes to Reno again for a NASB conference. This was my first experience with the new executive director, Deb Oliver. I'm looking through the session options, and I'll be damned if there isn't a session called Silver State Governance. Remember that? The same governance model that Lola brought forward to the board, which was voted down, the one that had her name all over the website, the one that she told me on stage during a board meeting that I was confused about. And this was not just a random one-off session. It was worth half a credit of the 6 credits that trustees need to continually get to keep being a trustee. Obviously, I attend it. The entire session is just about this model in general, what it is, and that we can choose to adopt it. There was no actual training on how to govern, just a sales pitch to sign up for timeshare, but instead of timeshare, it's Silver State Governance. I'm like, you've got to be shitting me right now. I'm taking notes. They share a few slides, one which is just a quote from the mysterious stranger, AJ Crabill. It seems kind of strange. So on one of the slides, it said who was behind Silver State Governance, and the answer was Chiefs for Change, the Council for Great City Schools, and the Texas Education Agency. It said, together working to scale Lone Star Governance, the board governance model developed for the entire state of Texas by AJ Crabill, Deputy Commissioner of TEA, Governance and Investigations. Lone Star Governance was adopted by all Texas school districts in 2017. Then a slide says, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors do. AJ Crabill. They explain the first step is to recruit Silver State Governance coaches to coach and evaluate individual trustees and boards as a whole, that coaches don't have to be prior board members or educators. They only need to apply, be selected, read the material, and take a 2-day training. I raise my hand and I ask if we can get the presentation emailed to us for future reference. Deb kind of looks around, she asks somebody and she goes, no. I say, oh, okay. So I start taking pictures of every single slide and writing down every single word spoken, even other people's questions and Deb's answers. I was actually so pissed at this point and feeling like I'm going to have to say something. There's 100 different school board trustees here from 17 different Nevada districts being sold this right now. I'm thinking I have to say that this is bad, but also I don't really know why this is bad yet. I just know that both Jara and Lola are hellbent on the board using it, so it's definitely bad. Lola had appointed herself to the NASB committee and had been telling everybody, including the new executive director, how disruptive I am and that I'm always causing trouble for no reason. So if I say these things that I want to say, I will be proving her right in their eyes. But I didn't care that much. I was ready to go down that road. Luckily, I did not have to because Chris Garvey, who was one of the CCSD trustees with 10 years experience, who was a badass on the board in the past and who was known to be against corporate privatization and centralization, did it for me, and she did it better than I could have. So Chris Garvey starts asking Deb Oliver bunch of questions. I'm in between them. I'm turning back and forth. I'm writing down every single thing Chris says, every single thing Deb says. It's like a tennis match. Chris Garvey asks basically, though, who will train the boards. She wants to know if the goal is to mandate, what happens if the trustees don't comply. Deb keeps answering with things like, I'm not sure, and not to my knowledge, to every question. And then towards the end of Garvey's questioning, she ends with this statement. She says, and I write it down verbatim, now this whole thing makes sense. We get appointed a coach who gets trained by who knows. I can only imagine the Department of Ed or Chiefs for Change. And now that individual board members and boards can get compared by a rating system, maybe a star rating system, it will make sense to move to appointed board members. This is really scary, frightening. So that was concerning. I made a note to look into Chiefs for Change later. I try to find more information about Silver State Governance, but there's not anything about it online, so I start looking into AJ Crabill himself. And here's what I learn. Hold on to your seats. Okay. In 2008, AJ Crabill was elected as a board member in Kansas City, Missouri. His name at the time was Eric Leonard West. In 2010, he begins contracting with the Council of Great City Schools, speaking, networking, consulting, planning governance models, and getting paid by the council. I have no idea how that's not a huge conflict of interest for a sitting trustee to do, but that's what he was doing. Because of his work, he was nominated for an Urban Educator Award. I wonder if Mike Casserly told him that he's the one to watch real leadership material. In 2015, in Texas, a law passes that requires any school with a low star rating for 2 years in a row to be put on a school improvement plan. If the low star score remains for 3 years after that, then that school will either be closed, chartered, or the entire district taken over. And that law was HB 1842. You're probably wondering, what does this have to do with AJ Crabill? He's a trustee in Kansas. Well, you'll see. Early 2016, Eric Leonard West changes his name to AJ Crabill. The fact that he did this made me pay for an extensive background check on him. I'll just say that his past paints a picture of a person who had some financial hardship and inside experience with a judicial system that unfairly criminalizes nonviolent and non-substance abuse related misdemeanors. That's as much as I'm going to share because I try to keep my judgments and my shit talking specific to public education related activities, but that would explain why someone might be willing to be puppeteered and rewarded with money and status. April 2016, AJ Crabill does not run for re-election in Kansas. His term expires, and a week later, he's appointed to the Texas Education Association by Mike Morath, the Texas Commissioner of Education. In Nevada, this would be the comparable to the Nevada State Superintendent. So he appoints him as his deputy and also the Commissioner of Governance and Investigations, which is a brand new role with a $180,000 salary. In October 2016, AJ sends letters to 11 school boards in Texas requiring them to undergo Lone Star governance training, stating that if they reject the training, he would send in a state-appointed board to run the district, close the schools, or remove all principals and assign outside managers to oversee the campuses. A 2016 article by Aaliyah Swaby says, Deputy Commissioner of Education AJ Crabill sent letters to 11 school boards saying they need additional governance training because their districts submitted unsatisfactory plans for turning around floundering campuses. All 11 superintendents and boards agreed to the training, with a few expressing frustration. Dallas trustee Joyce Foreman said, "While I don't have a problem with training, I do have a problem with the demand that I implement whatever it is we're going to be trained on when I don't even know what it is. If Morath decides not to approve a plan, he can replace the board of trustees, replace the principal, or shut the school down completely," Crabill said. Okay, interesting. In 2018, AJ begins investigating Houston Independent School District, which is the 8th largest school district in the country, with over 200 schools and 200,000 students. He claims that the failure of some of their schools is the failure of the board and not the superintendent. The board also has a new interim superintendent and begins the hiring process of a new one, which is expected to take a while. March 2019, the Houston board was at the end of the search process and set to name and hire a new superintendent the following week when a Texas state conservator announced that the state was suspending Houston's superintendent search process because of the investigation that was still happening. April 2019, Houston is in complete chaos. They've had this investigation looming with no answers for like a year. They don't have a superintendent. Everything is in limbo. AJ then announces that his department has determined there's reason to conduct a special investigation into Houston. A 2019 article by Jacob Carpenter explains, Crabill said state officials are still conducting a special investigation with the most severe punishment resulting in board members resigning their powers to a state-appointed governing team. Houston will most likely lose local control of its school board if any one of 4 chronically low campuses fails to meet state academic standards this year. June 2019, an email that I got my hands on much later shows communication between Nancy Brune, representing the Gwynn Center, Joan Ebert, the very new Nevada State Superintendent, Superintendent Jara, and AJ Crabill. The email is from Nancy to Jara and reads, Superintendent Jara, are you available on July 3rd to meet with Superintendent Ebert and AJ Crabill regarding Silver State governance? Thanks. July 2019, the Clark County School Board goes to Harvard. Superintendent Jara and AJ Crabill are glued at the hip. They clearly know each other very well and communicate often. August 2019, Silver State governance is on the Clark County School Board's agenda. This is the first anyone in Nevada hears about it. November 2019, there's a Silver State governance training at NASB for all Nevada school districts, and for actual credit, several of the school boards had been pitched to and had opted in already. Now I'm going to pause here on this timeline to stay in the story, but then I'm going to catch you up on with what AJ has been doing since towards the end of the episode. All right, so AJ Crabill was just a regular school board member. He wasn't elected because he had any special skills or knowledge. He did not finish high school, he did not go to college, and he has zero education experience. I'm not knocking that part because I have a similar background. While I am qualified to be a publicly elected official by the choice of voters, I feel like if somebody had come to me and was like, hey, Danielle, how about you don't run for re-election and instead you come to a different state entirely, we're going to make you the deputy state superintendent as well as place you in a new position that we're making up right now. And your job is going to be to monitor and punish all the elected school boards in that state. I feel like first I would say, thanks, but I'm not sure that I'm qualified to be in that role. What makes you want me for that role? And then also, why would I want to do that to school boards? And why would you want to do that to school boards? Ironically, I am more qualified than AJ. I have significantly more education than him. Did AJ Crabill go to beauty school for aesthetics? No. Did he do a year of community college to probably be an elementary school teacher but then quit? No. Did he go to real estate school? No. Did he go to bartending school? No. I have at least 4 extra random schools under my belt than he does, and I would not be comfortable showing up and exerting my authority to a ton of actual educators, so I'm not sure why he was. So I'm learning about him, and I'm like, okay, I see you. As a person who has made it through life, often unqualified, but always confident, and by unapologetically busting into rooms that I do not belong in, like the Kool-Aid Man, I can spot when someone else is doing the same thing. I have entered and risen through many industries by showing up to the party and walking in like I'm on the guest list. This guy and I have the same MO, okay? And while I respect the hustle, there's a difference between showing up on your own and with good intentions and showing up because you're being puppeteered and rewarded by people who have bad intentions, like one of us came here to party and the other one came to poison the punch. Now, right after this session about Silver State governance with all the school boards in Nevada, I begin to notice that same exact quote that was on the slide that I wrote in my notes pop up everywhere. And I mean everywhere. It's not even a good quote. In fact, it's pretty gaslighty. Student outcomes won't change until adult behaviors do. Oh, cool. Yeah, that does not say anything. But I bet he has suggestions of how I could fix my behavior and all the adults can fix their behavior, for the kids. And if we don't adjust our behavior to his standards, then we're all harming kids, So yeah, cool. Gotcha. Yeah, we're all caught up now. Okay. So I'm finding it very hard to believe that like all these people at the same time just happen to think that this nothing quote is revolutionary, inspiring, and insightful enough to blast it everywhere. Like if that's not possible, it sucks. Yet every time I turn around, there's the quote. Oh my God, here's a few examples. November, it was on that single slide in the governance presentation. Then it was literally written on the whiteboard by Deb Oliver at our board retreat. It was the only thing on the board upon arrival. It was put front and center on NASB's website. It was on a slide from a well-attended local education leadership summit. Lots of materials and websites distributed to school board members included this quote. And Jara even had it on the wall of the executive conference room in the admin building where he meets with cabinet members and hosts committee members regularly. On the wall. And I've witnessed so many adults read this and respond like, oh yeah. And like, what? It is the freaking emperor's new clothes. Okay, like do not lie. Like you think it sucks too. Admit it. Now, what I think is bad behavior is to charge taxpayers to take away their voices and ruin their school districts, but I digress. So every time I saw it somewhere new, I would just get a little bit more pissed off because I knew exactly what this was. You see, I'm a marketer. You can't market to a marketer, okay? This is a sales tactic used in the business industry to introduce a personal brand. This wasn't to market a governance model. It was to market him, the name, AJ Crabill. And that's why I was so upset. Here's how this works in the online marketing space. Sometimes a person will pay to join a mastermind or a network of influential people who who are going to help them launch their new course or their product or their service or whatever. Or there's maybe a revenue share or affiliate commission or something for them. But the strategy is to get this person in front of a mass audience in a short amount of time, seen many times by each individual with something sticky or memorable, and then they get introduced over and over to the same audiences, which overlap, by leaders in an industry in the same way, so that this person is imprinted in the audience's mind as an expert. Often it would be like a hot tip or a new catchy method to do something, or it could be something like a quote that gets shared over and over and over to the point that later when the person hears a name associated with the quote, they're like, oh yeah, that person, I've heard of them. That person is legit. But they only think that because they have subconsciously absorbed the name associated with the gimmick like 1,000 times. It's basically new age guerrilla marketing. So I'm seeing this and I'm like, there is a reason that this dude is being marketed to everybody in Nevada and especially Clark County. Like, when is the thing coming? When will he show up already positioned as the expert, promising the secret sauce to something like a snake oil salesman, and everybody will eat it up because they've been conditioned for years now to think that he's somebody important. I mean, he has his own quote, so he must have all the answers. I was actually predicting that he would get hired by the Department of Education to investigate the school boards and run the same play that he did in Texas, and I still think that that might be what's coming down the line. I start to tell anybody that I can, reporters I've made connections with, teachers, admin, people in Jara's cabinet, that he would like literally die from shock if he knew they talked to me. And I knew that I sounded a little nutty. There wasn't any proof that I could show anybody. I'm like, look, $20 says this guy will soon be known by everybody and just accepted as like this super important person in education in Nevada. And then he's going to get his hands on our governance. Bet. A lot of those people are following the podcast and you know who you are. And you owe me $20. Except many of you have sponsored the show for more than $20, so why don't we just call it even? I go back to my note to self, research Chiefs for Change, and oh my God, here we go. I'm just going to get right to it. Chiefs for Change is an organization that selects ambitious school leaders and grooms them to be superintendent. I didn't say experienced school leaders. I said ambitious school leaders. The potential superintendent, or what they call a future chief, is taught a set of ideals and then introduced to a network of other Chiefs for Change trainees and graduates, as well as consultants and CEOs of national education companies like textbook testing and software companies, like the same exact companies that were vendors and trainers at the Council for Great City Schools conference. Then that person's name and a payment is given to a superintendent search firm to place their chiefs and their future chiefs in large districts, or any districts actually. How do they ensure that their chiefs get placed? By funding the campaigns of school board members and suggesting that they hire a certain search firm. The firm that delivered Jara to CCSD is called Ray & Associates, and it is located in Iowa. Chiefs for Change folks also have EMOs, educational management companies, which is code for chains of charter schools. I learned that Jara is a future chief. I also learned that former state superintendent Steve Cannavaro is now on the Chiefs for Change executive board. Yes. Remember him from the last episode? Lola, I was recruited by Steve Cannavaro to bring Silver State governance in. Remember that? Okay. So I look through all the chiefs and I see William Haidt from Philadelphia. But wait, he graduated from the Broad Academy. I learned that from Matt Damon. Did he attend and graduate from both? I look up the Broad Academy. I can't find any graduates online. I can't find anything about it online. But right after this documentary came out, it had basically put a target on the Broad Academy's back, so it fizzled out. And at that same time, Chiefs for Change appeared with a full roster of alumni. All of the chiefs used to be Broad Academy graduates, including the superintendent from the Harvard story. You know that Office meme where Pam is pointing to two different pictures but saying it's the same picture? It's like that. I run a search for the words Broad Academy through the CCSD board meeting minutes, and I learned that the board began contracting with them for training in 2000. I start to think, was Jara the first one? I then research every single superintendent CCSD has had in 20 years, going back to 2000, when I was a CCSD student. I discover that all the superintendents hired, except for two, which were both very short-lived, were graduates from the Broad Academy or Chiefs for Change. So for nearly 20 years, CCSD has been led by a superintendent from Jara's soup group. And because we keep getting served these superintendents in a box, we have not even had a fighting chance at improving the school district. Not once since I was a CCSD student myself. Next, I learned that Chiefs for Change is operated by an organization called the Foundation for Excellence. The Foundation for Excellence is owned by Jeb Bush, former governor of Florida, brother to former President George Bush, who was responsible for many of the failed educational reforms which have caused major damage like No Child Left Behind, Common Core, the tying of teacher evaluations to standardized test scores. We're not even there yet, but holy shit. I do not think that it is that far of a jump to say that our superintendent might as well be Jeb Bush, as well as all of the superintendents that Jeb Bush has trained and placed across the country. Then I think back to the timeshare sales pitch that said Silver State Governance was created by Chiefs for Change, the Council of Great City Schools, and TEA. So now I know that Chiefs for Change is Jeb Bush. Okay. But what about the Council for Great City Schools? In concept and at face value, it's the superintendents and the board members who are on the executive committee at whatever time that operate the council, make policy decisions, choose vendors, etc. But many of those board members have been bought, and many of the superintendents have been put through grooming programs. Districts pay dues to the council, which I imagine covers their staffing and their operations, but like who is renting out fancy museums and paying for the ballrooms and the award ceremonies? And it was not too hard to find that answer. A quick Google search revealed that the person that's predominantly funded the Council of Great City Schools for decades is Bill Gates. He's spent billions with the council. Okay, so cool. Okay, but what about the TEA? Well, AJ Crabill is essentially a nobody who was plucked from Kansas and given a job running a state department. Same with his boss, Mike Morath. He was a trustee plucked to run the Texas Education Association. Okay, well, who plucked him? Oh, that was Texas Governor Greg Abbott. So unless somebody else is puppeteering him, then it's him. Okay, cool. So since the Clark County School Board did recently accept this governance model, I also think it's safe to say that the CCSD board is essentially being directed by Jeb Bush, Bill Gates, and Greg Abbott. And then all their big tech friends fund school board campaigns and then introduce them to their canned curriculum, their standardized testing companies, teacher recruitment firms at fancy conferences, and provide them with training so that they don't question anything when the superintendent contracts with that company soon after to the tune of millions of dollars a year while ignoring the competitive bidding process and damaging the local economy by sending all the taxpayer money out of Nevada to other states, usually Florida, where both Jara and Jeb Bush happen to be from. So, oh my God. Okay. Quick side tangent. Okay, I'm not done explaining this yet, but for everybody who is talking about CCSD being a disaster, and it is, here's how your conversations should start. Like if you're talking to your friend or your coworker or somebody at the grocery store, this is the conversation you should be having. Hey friend, do we believe that the Clark County School District has been led for decades by a handful of tech billionaires? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, and it is, then the next question is, do we agree with their ideologies? You know, like the cutting of recess and the obsession with standardized testing, the prioritization of collecting your kids' data over things like art, music, athletics, life skills. And if that answer is yes, then great. You should support the billionaires and their superintendent academies and all of their Jaras and the trustees that support their Jaras. But if the answer is no, then the next question should be, well, what can we do about it? And then further conversation and ideas should spur from there. This entire conversation could be a flowchart, like note to self, make a flowchart. The fact of the matter is that right now, it does not matter what your opinion is, what political party you belong to, what kind of credentials you have, or if you have great ideas or solutions for the school district. Unless you agree with the ideologies of a few billionaires and their indoctrinated minions, then you're not going to be satisfied with public education as long as they are controlling it. They're able to get away with this because they are purposely creating chaos as a distraction technique to cause everybody to fight each other so that they can slip all their shit through uncontested. They're making governance and policy changes that take away the people's rights, give away the board's power, steal billions of dollars a year of all of our tax dollars, terrorize our educators until they quit, and deliver subpar standardized education consisting of canned curriculum and nonstop assessment of all of our children because they can make money off of it. Meanwhile, everybody is pissed off about everything besides that, except for the one thing that they should be mad about. And I'm not saying to stop fighting each other, okay? I have very strong opinions. I am an ENTP. Like, I would be like, let's go, if I thought that fighting each other about our opinions would make a difference. Right now, the only move is for all of us to fight them instead of each other. And we don't have to hold hands while we do it. We can fight them separately from all directions. We can get creative, but they are parasites. We need to get them the fuck out, not just out of CCSD. They need to get the fuck out of the state of Nevada. And after that, we can all resume fighting each other if we so wish. So at this point in the story, I'm like taking it all in. I'm like Jeb Bush, Florida, Steve Cannavaro, AJ Crabill, Lola Brooks, Jesus Hara, the Houston School District, Philadelphia, that cryptic warning from the superintendent at Harvard. I start researching more because this is clearly happening, but like, why? Like, what is the point? What is the end goal? Again, I'm new to education. Like, I did not have any background or inside information of the big scope of public education. All of this was new to me. I'm here with this information. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I start watching documentaries about corporate takeovers and privatization of school districts. Names and companies that I'm seeing are matching people and companies that I've been introduced to. I'm connecting dots. I'm learning about the pattern that happens to districts before they get completely ruined, closed, or privatized. And then when this happens, the student outcomes that they're talking about, they actually become worse. But they start changing the rules and manipulating data, and then they're able to sell the community on things being successful. And they have friends at local news stations. And I'm realizing that all of these things that I'm learning about that are happening to other districts are happening to Clark County right now. I'm going to explain the privatization and school takeover agenda in a nutshell, okay? There are basically two camps of opinions around education. There's one group that follows a strict educational belief system. They call themselves educational reformers. But what they are, and what the other group has named them, are the disruptors. Those fighting the disruptors are known as the resistance. Now, here's a quick insight into the privatization agenda from Diane Ravitch's book, Slaying Goliath, The Passionate Resistance to Privatization and the Fight to Save America's Public Schools, which I highly suggest everybody reads. Diane writes, the ideology of the disruption movement in the education world relies on two dogmas. First, the benefits of standardization, and second, the power of markets at scale to drive innovation and results. Their blind adherence to these principles have been disastrous in education. These principles don't work for the same reasons they don't work for families, churches, and other institutions that function primarily on the basis of human interactions, not profits and losses. Disruptive leaders, like those trained by Eli Broad's unaccredited Broad Academy, are trained to be top-down managers who crack down on teachers, reduce their autonomy, and require them to organize their classrooms and lessons according to prescribed protocols. If you happen to be thinking like, well, these people are successful, would it be the worst thing to take their advice and subscribe to their ideologies? That answer is yes, because this belief system and the goals that they have for public schools across the country do not apply to their own children. Their children go to very expensive specialty private schools. Their kids are not using the same curriculum and taking the same standardized tests that they've determined are best for everyone else's kids and that they also profit from. In most districts, when this happens, the community fights back, often led by the teachers' unions and joined by the local business community. But Clark County's teachers' union only gets involved in fights regarding teachers' pay and things like recruitment efforts. They do not speak out against no-bid contracts or the over-testing or the non-stop canned curriculum. And the Vegas business community, for the most part, is pro these reforms because our business community are the hotel moguls and are part of this group of billionaires. I'm going to be straight with you, okay? Listen, once I started realizing all this and thinking back to getting a write-up in Urban Educator my first month in and being praised by the Council of Great City Schools, I'd be lying if I said that the thought did not cross my mind that I could turn this around if I wanted to. Like, there's a lot of opportunity here. Do I want to ask for a high-paying job with the casino industry? Or a marketing job with one of the vendors that we contract with, just like at least 3 of the current CCSD trustees have done? Or to be a consultant or a speaker, just like AJ did? I realized that I could absolutely kill it. Like, I can turn on the charm when I want to. I could probably take AJ's job if I wanted to. Those thoughts were quickly drowned out by my anger towards the assholes trying to ruin public education as a whole, which is intended to give every human a fair playing field, in which the people agreed to as a way to improve society. So like they are cheating society, and I do not like cheaters. On top of that, I'm taking it very personally that they're targeting my school district, the school district I grew up in, that my kids are in, that my 21 nieces and nephews are either in or going into, the district that many of my high school friends work in, and many of the new friends that I've made since getting elected work in. So then I doubled down by putting everything on the record and on social media. Later, I tripled down by filing ethics complaints and open meeting law violations. And this podcast is basically me quadrupling down. I mentioned in another episode that before I ran for trustee, I was in local business circles. I attended chamber events, was spotlighted in magazines, won some awards. I think it's safe to say that they won't be giving me any awards anytime soon. I keep researching, and the more that I learn, I'm like, why isn't somebody writing about this? Like, why isn't CCSD in this list of districts in this book that I'm reading about? Why isn't there a documentary crew here right now? Where is Diane Ravitch? Where is Matt Damon? Back to AJ Crabill's timeline. Didn't forget about that. We left off at the end of 2019, where we are in the Storytime episodes, right? Our mysterious stranger has been very busy since then. Let's learn what he's been up to the whole time and what he's currently working on. In 2020, he was appointed as conservator of the DeSoto Independent School District, basically managing the board to get them into compliance. Now, this was during COVID and shutdowns and distance learning and reopening, and knowing the stress as a school board member at that time, I can't even imagine also having this guy trying to get the board into compliance. Like, how did they do that? Oh my God. In December 2021, AJ mass emails all Nevada school board members about the Council of Great City Schools governance coach cohorts. It reads, "The council is excited to launch inaugural board chair and board coach cohorts for 2021. The CGCS governance coach cohort," say that 5 times fast, "will accept seasoned board members to participate in a 12-month training to become certified student outcomes focused governance coaches who, once certified, are then positioned both to better serve in their own district and to actively support other districts throughout the council." This has Lola Brooks written all over it. This is her dream. January 28th, 2021. The Nevada State Board goes through Silver State governance training. Board members Mark Newbern and Felicia Ortiz rave about the training, even citing the quote exactly in their tweets. Just completed 2 days of training in the new Silver State governance model for school boards with the rest of the State Board of Ed. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. 2021, the CCSD board attends a NASB conference in Lake Tahoe with all other Nevada boards, and now AJ Crabill is the keynote speaker. Well, he sure quickly went from completely unknown to anybody when Silver State governance appeared to his governance model being pitched to us by Deb Oliver in Reno to now being the headliner at a conference in Tahoe. I have his whole keynote recorded. It's not good. But still, everyone's like, oh my God, he has a quote. He has a quote. Not just anyone can have a quote. This guy has a quote. He must know things we don't know. February 2021, AJ is training the Salt Lake City School Board, where one member told Fox News that he was insulting. During our December meeting, Mr. Crabill deliberately shamed members of the Salt Lake City School District in a scheduled meeting in front of the public. Okay, so not off to a great start there. March 2021, AJ is training the Los Angeles Unified School Board, and the community starts fighting back on him and the governance model. An article by Carl J. Peterson quotes, "Charter school industry-backed members of the LAUSD have made it clear that they will ram through their privatization agenda without taking input from the minority of the board that supports public education." Well, that sounds pretty familiar to me. August 2021, AJ contracts with the Seattle School Board, but he doesn't start implementing things until 2022, which leads the community to start fighting back on him and the governance model. A 2023 article from Robert Cruikshank titled "Seattle School Board Should Move Away from Student Outcomes Focused Governance" explains that the district is cutting beloved programs like mock trial and jazz band. The trustees let it happen despite the whole community coming out begging them to save the programs, because if they voted differently, the board would have been charged with micromanaging. The article reads, "Following the SOFG plan, the board is also working on a policy diet, in which the board will give control over many existing policy areas to the superintendent. Instead, the board approves goals for the superintendent to meet and guardrails. These goals and guardrails are vague and do not specify what happens if the goals aren't met or the guardrails aren't respected. This model resembles those used by corporate and nonprofit boards and applies them to a publicly elected school board. It's no surprise given that its backers support a corporate approach to public education and have worked to limit the power of elected school boards. June 28th, 2022, AJ is working with San Francisco School Board, which leads to the community eventually fighting back on him and the governance model. A 2023 article on the blog Save Seattle Schools by Melissa Westbrook shares what AJ had recently said on a webinar explaining his vision for school governance. He said that it's good to limit school board members' authority so that you get less single-issue candidates. He said that candidates should have to complete the student outcomes governance model before they can file to run. He said he wonders if a state law should change to where trustees would be automatically recalled if student scores drop. He said that if a board implements student outcomes-focused governance, that a new board shouldn't be able to get rid of it. The policy should live across superintendents and boards. He also said the board needs to give the superintendent super clear guidance. And that reminded me of the CCSD board developed vague goals for evaluating Superintendent Jara in 2022 under Deb Oliver's direction. We were told that Jara cannot be held accountable for anything that wasn't clearly defined and agreed upon beforehand, and that there could only be 3 to 5 things that we list as his expectations. I had asked, so what if he does things like change the Title I funding in the middle of the year and take $5 million from schools without board approval, or cut all 170 deans out of nowhere with no prior discussions, or try to steal all the principal savings accounts and then delete portions of emails about it before forwarding to the trustees? I was told no, and that if we had not clearly said, we don't want you to cut the deans, and if the board had not put it in the guardrails, then he could not be held responsible if he was to do that. Obviously, I did not appreciate that answer. And then the next training with Deb Oliver included a surprise intervention for me. It just so happened that both of my 2 allies on the board at the time, Linda Cavazos and Lisa Guzman, had given notice that they were not going to be able to attend that work session. So Deb Oliver, Superintendent Jara, our board attorney, and Jara's 4 favorite members of the board sat around in a circle and took turns explaining all the ways that I was not acting appropriately, how I was personally hurting them, and how my behavior was impacting the entire school district. Some of them cried. They spent 2 hours trying to get me to acknowledge that my adult behavior was directly harming the children of CCSD and to admit that I am a huge part of the problem. I spent 2 hours asking them why the hell they were saying these things to me and not Superintendent Jara, and why the fuck they refused to hold Lola Brooks accountable for editing all of our governance policies and taking away the board's power behind our backs. Ultimately, they were all very disappointed that I was refusing the support that they were offering me. I come from a split family with substance abuse on both sides. I've been running interventions since I was 10. You are not going to trick me into admitting that I have a governance problem and seeking help for it, okay? This really happened. It was live streamed. We could not have our phones, and when I checked my phone later, it was blowing up with everybody like, what did I just witness? Was that a therapy session? Linda Cavazos was texting me, what are they doing? I had no idea they're going to do this. Oh my God, don't respond to any of their questions. Sorry, Linda, too late. Now let's go back to our timeline. March 2023. The state of Texas takes over Houston Independent School District, the 8th largest district in the country, consisting of 200,000 students. The announcement made by Greg Abbott's guy, Mike Morath, amounts to one of the largest school takeovers ever. The Texas Education Agency will replace the superintendent and the district's elected board of trustees with an appointed board of managers. Morath said the board has failed to improve student outcomes while conducting chaotic board meetings marred by infighting, and violating open meeting and procurement laws. Other big cities, including Philadelphia, in recent decades have gone through state takeovers, which are generally viewed as last resort and often met with community backlash. It's almost like if certain people wanted schools to not perform well so that they could close them and pass the buildings off to education management companies to then be turned into charter schools, or if they wanted to take over the whole district by replacing the board and the superintendent with the new people appointed by the state, that all they would have to do is to keep the district in chaos, keep the board members fighting, have board members members act in ways that violate open meeting laws and stop the trustees from questioning any spending, thus ensuring they violate the fair purchasing laws. After a matter of time, they would be able to make the argument that these are the only solutions, the last resorts. August 2023, Chiefs for Change releases a report about how superintendents are very mistreated. They mean their superintendents, because to them, a community fighting back to stop them from ruining their school district is mistreatment. Here's what the article says. Self-proclaimed student outcomes evangelist AJ Crabill also offered advice on how to build stronger, more positive relationships with school boards. Here's what AJ has to say about superintendents, okay? They are constantly being asked to pour out their cup into others, and there is really no one in the organization who is typically making it their business to pour into the superintendent's cup, he said. So whatever school boards can put in place to help the work of the superintendent be less challenging and less fraught, less subject to burnout, accrues to the benefit of the students that they serve. Aww, poor little sad superintendent puppets. They're so burnt out with their $1,500 a day salaries and their unlimited amount of paid days off and their 20 plus overpaid cabinet members who do all their work for them and their wellness benefits and their Pelotons. Here, let me play my little violin for all the sad superintendent puppets. Can you hear that? November 2023. Austin, Texas starts Lone Star training. Their trainer is Ashley Paz, who was trained as a student outcomes focused governance coach by AJ Crabill. Ashley is the one that I met at Harvard, but didn't talk to her much because she was already good friends with Lola Brooks. A 2023 article by Brant Bingaman explains, Austin is in a tough position, forced to adopt Lone Star governance, and many believe the Texas Education Agency is setting up Austin to fail. The Lone Star model teaches that trustees should focus only on student outcomes, which means how students perform on assessments or tests. Those cannot be teacher-defined or district-defined measures. The approved assessments are standardized tests like STAR and MAP. He explained that Ashley Paz recently conducted a 2-day training with Austin's board and superintendent, which is mandated by the state. The author says similar sessions have been described as uncomfortable for people in Houston, where over 200 underwent the training after TEA's takeover. The trainers asked participants to cite examples of how their behaviors made it more difficult for children to achieve success. I'm still traumatized by it, said Lindsay Pollock. It felt like we were guinea pigs in some sort of grand experiment. During the training, Ashley Paz coached her and 24 others to admit how they failed students. They made us go around and tell how we let children down, and you're in the room hearing everyone repeat this self-flagellating mantra. It was the weirdest thing, and it was promoted as, this is what we do with school boards all across Texas. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're in some big trouble if this is what's happening everywhere in Texas. Pollock suspects that TEA's ultimate goal in Houston is to lay the groundwork for the privatization of the district's public schools. January 2024. Student outcomes focused governance is put on the Clark County School Board's agenda, and it gets approved. AJ is hired to train the CCSD trustees. He has a stipulation that it costs the taxpayers extra if the vote is not unanimous. And it wasn't. 2 board members voted no, and because of that, AJ pocketed an extra $20K, taking his earnings into the 6-figure mark. AJ Crabill has been working closely with the board since, including advising them on how to handle the Jara saga. To sum it up, this guy goes district to district, leaving school boards completely powerless through governance changes so that a superintendent is free to make as many purchases and cause as much damage as they want. And if the members of the board change or a superintendent is hired who won't support that agenda, coaches are at the ready to move in to replace elected board members and superintendents with appointed ones. I don't know about you, but the best phrase that explains my feelings about all of this is truly scary, frightening. We haven't even touched base yet on the spending and the companies and the no-bid contracts. We are going into that super soon, and you'll probably be overwhelmed. And when that happens, and when your brain is starting to shut itself down because it's too much to process, I need you to know that it gets even worse. This goes so deep into the pandemic and the companies and the contracts that were birthed in response to distance learning and safety protocols and the absolute recklessness and heartlessness that came from these corporate assholes at the most vulnerable of times. So this is your warning that if you have any faith at all left that the current education system is operating with the best intentions for you and your children, you should just stop following this podcast. Just unsubscribe and don't ever come back. It's like when I realized that I should have just turned off my TV during the the last episode of season 4 of Dexter, like right after he marries Rita, I should have been like, you know what? This is enough for me. I'd like to end it right here. Click. But I didn't. I kept going. And once you've gone too far, there's no going back. So this is your Dexter marries Rita moments. Proceed at your own risk of taking major damage to your idealism. An upcoming episode will be an investigatory episode where we are going to dive deeper into the individuals and organizations mentioned so far, and we are going to begin to connect a lot of dots. If you're going to keep following along as an unraveler, I suggest you having a little notebook like Steve from Blue's Clues, or a journal if you're more of a Harriet the Spy level. I prefer loose notes everywhere in my files and a visual representation, which my daughter calls my murder wall, but you do you. Here are some of the things that you're going to want to have written in your notes to prepare for the upcoming investigation episode, in no particular order except when first mentioned. From the Diary of a New Trustee episode: Carolyn Edwards, Jesus Jara, he changes the pronunciation all the time, Lola Brooks, Marianne Miller, Mike Casserly, Ray and Associates, the Council of Great City Schools. And you know what? Just go ahead and throw Bill Gates right in there too. From the Brainwashing at Harvard episode: John Kim, William Haidt, Pedro Martinez, Eli Broad, the Broad Foundation, the Broad Academy, PELP. From the Bot Board member episode: AJ Crabill, Steve Cannavaro, Reed Hoffman, Michelle Yee, Sheryl Sandberg, Brian Sandoval, Deb Oliver, the Gwen Center. From the Houston episode: Chiefs for Change, Lone Star Governance, Silver State Governance, Student Outcomes Focused Governance, Mark Newbern, Felicia Ortiz, Ashley Paz, the Texas Education Agency, Mike Morath, Greg Abbott, and Jeb Bush. Yeah, you're going to want to have your tinfoil hat ready. Friends, this podcast is truly a labor of love, and it takes a lot to produce. Every donation helps. Thank you so much to everybody who has contributed. And if you would like to support the show, visit unravelingeducation.com/sponsor. You can also help by taking a second to share this episode with your education curious friends and subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. Thank you so much for watching. See you later, alligator, unraveler, traveler. Oh, hello again. I'm Danielle Ford, and in this DIY tutorial, you'll learn how to make a tinfoil headband. It's like a tinfoil hat, but without that pesky hat hair. Now here's what you'll need to make your own tinfoil headband. Tinfoil. Now what you want to do is get a piece of tinfoil. So you want a piece of tinfoil that's long enough to make a headband. Next, you'll fold the tinfoil into whatever width you want for your headband. Folding it a few more times gives it an extra layer of protection. Great. Now just twist the ends and you're all set. There you have it. Now you're prepared to continue learning about all the politicians and the corporate billionaires that are conspiring to destroy public education. See you in the next episode.